Coming to you live from the Business RadioX studio, it's Franchise Marketing Radio. Ready to revolutionize your franchise with AI? Franchise Now empowers franchises with advanced AI solutions, automatic processes, and enhanced marketing strategies. From personalized customer interactions to predictive analytics, we help you harness AI to drive growth and efficiency. Transform your franchise with the power of AI. Visit Franchise Now to learn more and take your business into the future. Now, here's your host.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Franchise Marketing Radio. I'm your host, Rob Ganley, and today I want to welcome two special guests to our show. We're going to dig into the world of, I want to feature the brand Filta. They're a leader in eco-friendly commercial kitchen solutions. I am joined by two gentlemen, Paulo Gouveia, co-founder of the Filta Boston location, and he's going to talk to us more about his experience. And I also have Rob Totten, VP of Franchise Development. And he's going to also share a little bit more about the brand and what makes the model unique in this big world of franchising. As we all know, there's a lot of choices and a lot of businesses. So we're going to help you see what's unique about this brand. Guys, welcome to the show, and thanks again for being with me today.
Pleasure, Rob.
So, Paul, I want to start with you. Please tell me, your experience. I know it's probably a really big deal when you launch a business, right, for the first time, or I don't know if it was your first time. You'll share more with us. But tell us a little bit about that experience, both with this brand and just in that. Was there anything unique, like something that you came to in that experience that you kind of took with you and you can kind of share with the audience that really was unique for you in that experience as you started the business?
Yeah, so this was my first time running my own business. I came from the biotech world prior to this. So, basically being a strong biology background and having the environmentally friendly side to Filta was really something that attracted me to them. I did look at probably 6 or 7 other franchises. We went through, probably a very early stage kind of discovery process, and really none of them kind of hit with me. And I stopped all of them up until I started talking to Rob actually about Filta and what the Filta brand was about. But it's always been something I've kind of had a keen eye on. I'm really trying to what small part can I have in being more environmentally friendly, helping our environment out, being more carbon neutral. And so, having the opportunity to start a business or partake in the business where, I can now not only from my sake, but really help these different commercial kitchens to be more environmentally friendly was definitely a big selling point for me.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably a big selling point for the customer too, in a way. I mean, do you feel like that? I mean, do you talk about that a lot when, obviously, right, when you're approaching a customer, what makes you different, how you approach the services? But tell me how does that land on the customers when they learn about your unique way of doing that and how it relates to sustainability specifically?
Yeah, they love it. Absolutely love it. I actually had a new account recently that I just got. It was a local restaurant. And we have a little packet that we bring, as we do our little sales pitch. And I showed him sort of what the report. So we give a monthly report. We call it environmental impact report. And I showed him what that report would look like. And right off the bat, he was like, I want that framed. I want that framed, and I want that in the very front of my store. I want everyone to see that the second they walk in. And that's really, I mean, that's the response that we get, not just from restaurants, but pretty much all the different types of commercial kitchens that we handle. So hospitals, schools, commercial buildings. They really just love the idea of being able to say that from an environmental standpoint, they're really making an impact. Not just from usually these kitchens are run by third party vendors as well, but they're sort of who they run the kitchen for. Oftentimes, it's these big corporate companies who all have their own incentives to be more environmentally friendly. So when they can actually now display to their corporate partner that, hey, like we're not only doing a great job providing you food, but we're now being environmentally friendly and adding to the impact that you're having. It's a win-win for both sides, really.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and we're living in a world. Again, I'm going to put my marketing hat on, right? And so we're living in a world where being conspicuous about your approach to these things is very important. So,
Yeah.
like, for them to be able to do what you said, like frame a that, like, clearly we're using an innovative approach to doing this thing, and then we're going to frame it and show it. I mean, that's where we're at. That's what your customer knows their customers want to see. And I think we all want to see that, just being human. So I think it's an important thing in marketing, though, to know that. And that's the whole model is sort of built around that idea, and probably well ahead of its time as well. But Rob, I wanted to jump over to you just for a minute, and I just ask you, and I think you might be muted. Just good. There you go. Unmute. There you go. I wanted to jump back because I know this brand's been around a while, right? And this hasn't always been a thing, I'm sure. But tell me a little bit about the importance of that length of history. I know you've
Yeah.
seen a lot of brands. You've been in the business a while. Tell me from your view, what is that thing about this brand that is those standouts? What makes it unique since the beginning? And that itself is unique. That it's that, I think it's about a 25-year-old brand, but you tell me a little bit about the background.
Yeah. So to the bit of the historic perspective, and thanks again for having us today. Filta actually was originated in the UK. So we came overseas, and our founder, Jason Sayers, recognized actually a friend of his had a pub, and in the pub, fish and chips, there's a lot of fried foods, and one of the employees was injured handling the fryers. And really, from safety and risk mitigation, Jason investigated a bit more and found out that cooking fryer oil has a life. And through professional practices, microfiltration, we can extend the life of the cooking oil. So there's an environmental benefit to the restaurant because we reduce consumption, but also it becomes an economic impact because we're reducing cost of goods. So from that, Filta Fry was born with safety in mind, but also reducing cost and really impact on the environment. Filta Fry as a service was provided in the UK. And in 2002, the founders were looking at, hey, what better market than the US for fried food? So in 2002, Filta Fry was brought to the US. 100% of our growth strategy was and still is today franchising. So we don't have corporate owned entities that take our attention. All of our growth and really our success is based on the success of Paulo in the Boston market and our other 125 franchisees that service 46 states across the US. But that niche service of Filta Fry evolved into additional services. So while we provide a service for the fryers, we also take the oil at the end of its life. And instead of storing that oil on site in a bin or a drum, which is traditionally done, we instead haul that oil away. So my franchise owner has a vehicle. We've got 550 vehicles on the road today in North America. And those vehicles transport the waste oil. Instead of having an on-site storage, we transport it to a warehouse or a mini storage. And that oil is then turned to biodiesel. So we talk about that environmental impact and that sustainability. 100% of the waste oil that we collect, yellow grease, becomes biodiesel. And that's big, not just for the local customer, but also our national customers. So we have national customers that had ESG, corporate social responsibility, these initiatives for the environment. So not only do we impact the local stakeholders, but also the stakeholders at large. So those two services, Filta Fry and Filta Bio, we land our customers there, providing value, saving money, risk mitigation, environmental impact. But then we expand the services beyond that. There's additional services that we offer, but that's really the nature of Filta. When I started with the company 12 years ago, we had about 120 franchisees, and they weren't doing much more than about 10 million a year. And what that meant was a lot of our franchise owners were single unit operators. And we evolved and changed our strategies about 12 years ago, about the time I came, to instead of look for people who were buying a job, instead to finding franchise owners who were looking at executive model ownership like Paulo. So franchise owners who want to scale, grow not just multi-units, multiple vans, but also multiple territories. So we've evolved and changed. Today, we went from 120 franchisees 12 years ago to 125 today. But right now, our run rate is about 120 million. So we've grown tremendously over the last 12 years that I've been here.
That is tremendous. I will attest to that. And that is very attractive, right? To have, I like how you framed it as you're not buying a job, and that is important to understand the difference, right? You can turn into something like that and, be a solopreneur, so to speak. And that sometimes isn't what people are doing this all for, right? Ultimately. So, Paulo, tell us a little bit about that was a lot into that statement. It's amazing framing of how great this brand is. I have a bunch of questions, but just in terms of what was sort of the things you zeroed in on as you were doing your research, as you were learning about franchising? This model is very unique. There's a bunch of other things I want to talk about, but tell me, what was it for you? Like when you first got involved, you had said sustainability was a big thing, but from an economic standpoint, what were the things about the business model that you thought stood out and made it an attractive model for you to get a hold of and grow for yourself?
Yeah, I would say there's two components to that. One, the economical side that you brought up. There's a tremendous demand. And I think a large part of what I have found, really, it's a name brand recognition thing. I think is still something that we're working towards improving, and it's been, we can certainly talk a little bit more about what all of the changes that have happened recently in Filta, the really sort of increase the name brand recognition across the country. But when you do show up and you do talk to people about what we do, it's people love it. I mean, no one likes cleaning fryers. I mean, you walk into any kitchen, you ask any kitchen personnel, what's the most hated job you have here? And it's fryer cleaning. I've had two customers reach out to us, without, any kind of like solicitation or whatnot, because they had injuries, similar to what Rob mentioned and how Filta got started. It was, employee, one of their employees, went to go do the hot oil at the end of the shift, and, they burnt themselves. And just the liability aspect of that is such a massive hit to them, that they're just like, I don't really care what you charge to take it off my plate. And that's been sort of a general sentiment. And I can tell you without a doubt in my mind, pretty much every kitchen that we walk into, if we're there during hours where there are staff members there, they cheer for us. I mean, they just love knowing that, hey, I don't have to do that job. I mean, they just really, really despise it. And not only that, the level of cleanliness that we are able to get those fryers is just light years ahead of what they can do. They just don't have the proper tools. They don't have the proper PPE. So they know they're likely to get injured and they're not going to do a great job with it. And then meanwhile, we come in, we do a fantastic job doing it. We have the proper PPE, the proper training, the proper equipment. And so once they see what we do, once we do our demo, it's almost immediately a yes. Like obviously there's some logistics to handle. There's some pricing conversations to handle, but for the most part, they see the value right away. They just know that, there's true value there. And it only takes a couple of places for you to talk to, for you to understand that. And I did my due diligence. I talked to a bunch of owners. I talked to places that had the Filta services already. And within a couple minutes of those conversations, you just know that, they're just, people love us. The second you walk in, you start talking to them. It's just a really easy sale. It's more of an educational sale in a lot of ways, but it's just a really easy sale to do. And then more from like from sort of growing the business standpoint, my background, probably the last half of my career before I joined Filta, was in operations and sort of building companies, that's like startup companies in the biotech world. And so I did have a lot of experience of sort of building companies and the infrastructure of those companies from the ground up, really across the board, everything from the finance, accounting, to more sort of the manufacturing side, the commercial side, sales and marketing, sales operations. So I just had a lot of understanding of sort of how to build that, how to fix it and put the proper infrastructure. And as I spoke with Rob and sort of what the needs are of this business, it really hit home in a lot of ways. And I just felt very comfortable knowing that, I've done this before in a way, obviously very different, business types. But really, in a lot of ways, it's just the same thing. The infrastructure associated with running a business, in a lot of ways, it's a very similar model. And it was just that idea of saying, okay, I could just take my knowledge that I've done in the last 10 to 15 years and just apply it here. I can get this to be running relatively well pretty quickly just by implementing sort of best practices that I've learned over the years.
Yeah. And so like the customers, I know you have a diverse customer base too. It's more diverse than say restaurants. I wanted to just mention on the restaurants before we leave restaurants. So we talked about the environmental side of it and promoting that side, but also does it affect taste? Does it do
Yeah,
any
definitely.
like? Do they talk like? How do they weave that in, and how does that impact a restaurant client?
Yeah. So when you walk in, you're doing your pitch. I mean, that's one of the first things you talk about, right? You talk about sort of your oil quality. And when you start off with your oil, when you just get it out of the box, it's a very sort of light amber color. And as you use that oil, it starts to get a little reddish tint to it. It gets a reddish brown tint to it, and eventually gets this like very dark brown black color. That's usually when the oil is dead. In that time period, though, you're constantly frying in that oil. And every time that you fry in that oil, there's pieces of that food that gets inside of that oil that, as you just kind of a normal process. Part of that will drop down to the bottom and will continue cooking every time you have that oil going. It just breaks down that food and it gets to smaller and smaller and smaller particles, and to the point where then it starts free floating inside that oil. So everything that you go to cook down in that oil after, call it the midpoint of that oil's life, which is around the time that we will filter it, you have all these little particles of previously cooked food that are really just sitting there burning, right? So when you go to taste that food, instead of that sort of crisp, fresh flavor that you get off of like fresh oil, now you get sort of like a burnt taste to it. It's kind of this like weird, it's like a weird burnt taste, but it's got definitely a different taste to it. And that's what we filter out. We filter out over 99% of those particles. We just completely remove it from the oil. So the oil itself doesn't have that flavor. It's that previously cooked food that has that flavor that's now sticking to the food you're now cooking. So once we remove that flavor is completely gone. And that's really the biggest impact that you see when people really, and you can do a taste test and people see it and they immediately make that connection of like, wow, that actually tastes fresh, even though the oil, it might be a couple or 3 days old at that point. And you really definitely taste a massive difference in the quality of the oil.
Wow. Wow. Like to me, that is like what the one thing, like if you know the book, it was just, it's like you can work so hard to make your menu so much better, but like if you're using bad oil.
Yeah.
So,
and they want, Rob brought the point up from an economical standpoint. Oil is a little bit less expensive today than it was a few years ago during, when COVID was at its height. But so it's not as terrible from an economic standpoint, but it's still not great. You're still paying quite a bit for that box of oil. And so if you're trying into a lot of places, because of that taste, they'll throw away their oil before it even hits the midpoint of the oil's life. And now you're really burning oil and you're spending a lot of money on oil, where just a simple filtration will allow you to double that lifespan right off the bat. So it's just a massive saver for a lot of these places. Then you add in obviously the safety aspect of what we do, the fact that we clean it way, way better than they do. It just takes it off their plate. Their employees are happier. The retention rate increases. There's just a lot of benefits to doing it.
Yeah.
It does bring up a bit of a challenge, though, when we talk to a prospective customer to tell them that we're going to improve the taste of their food. Sometimes that comes across wrong. But the reality is we do improve the consistency, right? So the consistency of the flavor is improved. But the other part of it is, we talk about filtration, but really it's the benefit of microfiltration, which is what we provide. And it's great that Paulo comes from that scientific world because he understands microns, but we can microfilter down to the size of a white blood cell. And when you're getting down to that size, that's really one of the things that sets us apart. It's really what's proprietary about us. And really that's where the real benefits come in, because not only do we improve the flavor, but we are able to extend the life of that oil. Really the benefit of us being part of the team and that weekly repeat business, because we service clients on average of twice per week. We're in there constantly microfiltering the oil, cleaning the fryers, hauling away the waste oil and providing them with fresh oil. And at the end of the day, we're maximizing, optimizing the benefit to the customer and really ultimately guest satisfaction of the people that eat there. So there's a lot of other benefit.
Yeah.
I'll add one thing to what Rob was just saying. So there are some fryers that have these under-counter filter systems on them. And you can buy filters as well for those. Those filters is what we call sort of more our coffee filter. And the particle size that they remove is about a grain of sand. So we remove about 100 times smaller particles with our system compared to what those filters can do. And that's where you remove, like I said, over 99% of the particles that are kind of floating in the oil at that point.
Understood. Yeah, no doubt. You're doing it. You're taking a concept and saying, we're the market leader here. We know how to do this right, and it matters.
Yeah.
And that's the marketing, right? Like, how do you communicate the awareness of what you're saying? Because I got to say, this is all new info for me, like in terms of the level of service that you're talking about and why it matters. And it seems like a no-brainer. Like if I'm a restaurant owner, it's a no-brainer. Like I can't imagine unless the numbers were just too, you can't afford it or something, which I can't believe that would be the case. Like you said, it's sort of a no-brainer, which is why, and of course, everybody on the staff, hey, there's an indirect benefit. The employee satisfaction went up, right?
Yeah.
So the legal risk went down. Oh, wow. It's just something so simple as oil. You just don't think about.
Yeah.
But tell me about the customer base. So real quick, just not a long answer because I want to get into marketing and a little bit about a day in the life too, because, it's great to make money and all that. But what is it like to be a franchisee? But in terms of the other customer, so there's a big opportunity here. You kind of alluded to the territory is more than a solopreneur, right? You can build a business and a team and scale it. Tell me a little bit about the other customers that you service, the kinds of industries you find other than restaurants. And what does that look like in terms of opportunity? I know in some models, you're sometimes given a territory where it would be hard to get to all of it, right? It's the way it's built that way. Tell me a little bit about your opportunity here. Like you got restaurants as an example. How much bigger does it get and how far could it go for the ambitious guy that says, I'll go, because I got these goals. But it is the opportunity there. Show us that. And so tell me about the opportunity other than restaurants and who else you serve.
Yeah, sure. So really there's like I don't know, 5 or 6 sort of other than restaurant sort of areas that we serve. And Rob, you can definitely jump in if I miss one. So the primary ones are corporate parks. So all these big corporate buildings that have their own sort of cafeteria for their employees. That's a really big one for us. Hospitals is another really big one for us. So the hospitals are everywhere, right? All the different universities, a lot of private high schools, and actually, I'd say primarily private high schools, but some sort of private, sort of like primary schools as well will do it. Where they just want high quality. It's private schools, so they want high quality. You have stadiums, so sports stadiums will have them. So even like minor league stadiums, they go through a lot of fried food in those locations as well. I feel like I'm missing one. So corporate parks.
So you've touched on.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you've touched on a number of them, but I think backing up, most every market has restaurants and grocery stores. And many people think Filta must service all of the restaurants and grocery stores that are out there. But the reality is we only service about 1.5% of the restaurants and groceries in the market. So the good news is we're a $120 million a year company, and there's about a 98.5% upside across restaurants and groceries. As Paulo touched on, a lot of our customers are, because of our national relationships, we do a lot of healthcare facilities, higher education, the business dining, the corporate cafeterias. At the end of the day, when I started with Filta, we serviced about 70 sports venues across the country. And that was major league, minor league, collegiate. That 70 has gone up to 450 today. So the benefit for a Paulo who's in the Boston market, hey, good news. We service the Sox. We're at Fenway. We service Gillette is going to be one of Paulo's customers here in the near future. I think there's a football team that plays there. But at the end of the day, we're able to leverage those relationships with those big sports teams because everyone's a sports fanatic. So really anyone that has a deep fryer is a potential customer for us because we penetrate, we land and expand by focusing on the fryers. But at the end of the day, it can be any type of food establishment. They don't have to have a fryer. If they have a back of the house and they need cleaning, we can help them with that.
Well, I love doing these interviews because I'm at heart a sales and a marketing guy, and I love growth. I just love seeing it, right? And then so I see in what you just told me, I see big accounts, I see very large accounts that are just super stable and just keep paying the bills, right? And I see lots of them. So you have the small ones, you got elephants, you got mid-size, you got small, plenty to keep you going, plenty to scale, right? You could hire different kinds of salespeople to focus on different angles. And I would say the healthcare space, man, they really ought to. That's what was my comment about the hospitals. I'm like, man, if you're not making sure that the food is healthier, right, for a small investment.
I mean, you're at a hospital, right? Like
Yes,
you
you
hope
would
your
hope.
food is healthier, right?
Right. It's like, the minute you tell them about it, it should be an obligation, right?
Right.
So that's really cool. So tell me, what I wanted to get into now is marketing. And a lot of people, when they start a business and they think it's sales and marketing, maybe that's not their background. And obviously we just talked about how the sale part is pretty darn like, here it is. Let me show you. Let me explain this. And usually pretty darn obvious to the buyer, which is a great place to be. And everybody's cheering it on, wants it to happen. It works for the businesses. So that part is sales. But on the marketing side, starting a new business, launching into a market, tell me a little bit about your experience, Paulo, and how that worked. And, the good, the bad, what you would recommend, if it were a new franchisee or another business owner. I mean, anything like that you could share, the things you've learned, but share a little more about how they fill the gaps, how the brand helps you turn on that switch and try to get the word out about this. Because one of the other problems would be just awareness, right? Like it just seems to me like if you tell enough people, you probably keep the sales flowing. So tell me about the marketing. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I first started, there's a contractor that the Filta contracts out to get a list of every potential location in my territory that has a fryer. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the coming into this, the brand recognition was something that wasn't as high as we would obviously love it to be. And so one of the first things we did is we started off with just mailers, right? It's sort of the standard marketing approach of just touch points, right? How many touch points can you send out before that person actually starts paying attention to who you are? So we've done around 4,000 potentials. I think we've done around 3,500 at this point mailers that we've sent out to my territory to just initiate those touch points. We went on LinkedIn. We've connected. I think we're now so for just our territory, we have about 150 people we've connected with in our region. And we're slowly growing that sort of that block. We're using Facebook and Instagram to try to connect with people as well. A lot of it ends up really being word of mouth. I think probably about 10 to 15 of my current customers were recommendations from previous customers. And so, it's just trying to grow in every which way possible. As I mentioned as well, there's a whole sort of revamp of how the sales and marketing is being done at Filta. And a lot of it is, using things like Google Ads, right? Like, people, these sous chefs and chefs and directors and these especially these bigger locations, they're on their websites, finding vendors for different things every single day. Can we use just kind of Google Ads of like, hey, if you're going to a company like Restaurant Depot or Web Restaurant, I think it's what it's called. Can we have a little Google Ads there that just talks about us a little bit, right? It's really that sort of that 7 to 12 touch points is what I'm focused on to try to just engage as much as possible with these different locations. There's conferences that Filta does every year or participates in every year. Again, just really just increasing that knowledge, increasing those touch points is kind of what really is what we're trying to do right now.
Yeah. And one thing I want to couple. Yeah, go ahead, Rob. You chime in. I wanted to make. Yeah, no. You go. But I do have I think something you might say. Go ahead. I'm gonna let you start.
Yeah. So 12 years ago, what brought me to Filta was we had an inside sales department. Basically, it was a coaching platform to help franchise owners continue to grow. And at the end of the day, it's a collaborative approach to work with franchise owners. And through inside sales, our team will reach out to franchise owners' markets and on their behalf, make sales calls either by phone or, as was mentioned, LinkedIn, or working with our national customers and their channels. But our job is to help get franchise owners in front of prospective customers. So I think our inside sales department is one of those things that's really been a bit of a game changer. Again, over the last 12 years, I've seen how it's impacted local franchise owners' growth. Because while we've used the word easy, sales is not easy. It takes work. And I think the biggest thing is just keeping our eye on the ball, continuing to focus on business development. And that's where I think our inside sales and national sales departments really excel in assisting franchise owners with their growth. So that's a lot of the marketing efforts that we talked about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, no doubt. No doubt. No, I think that you're right. Sales is work, and no matter what, I'm a sales guy at heart, so I know the work, and there is variations of that work. And one of the best things to sell is stuff that people really want, right? So that's what. But hey, we're all busy, and no matter what you do when you're doing outreach, it is hard to get people to zero in. So we know that. And so it sounds like you've got a lot of bases covered. But one of the unique, what I was going to extend on that is that you also have a residual model, right? And it's an ongoing relationship. So for me, I've always liked that. I like having both. So it's like we can scale a lot of customers, but it's also repeat customers. So that really gives you a whole lot of leverage, and that revenue can build, and that also gives you the ability to keep marketing, right? Get that next customer, I'll do more marketing, and so it's an engine that just keeps building momentum. So that is important. So tell me a little bit about the business model that way, in terms of how you service customers, how the repeat business works, what those options look like, how you might have some additional services, and tell me a little bit about the vertical growth, I guess, of an account.
Yeah, sure. So most of our customers are, as like Rob said, they're either doing once or twice a week. There's a few that do every other week, and they're just a really, really slow kind of movers. But typically they're doing once or twice a week, and from there, that's when we could start talking about our other business lines. So we have the two main ones that that kind of are additive to the Filter Fry business. Really, and there's two main business lines, and I'll get to the second business line in a second. But these sort of secondary ones are Filter Drain. And so it's a probiotic that we do, again, so trying to go to the environmentally friendly side. So most locations that will have sort of the drain cleaning, they use these, caustic and toxic chemicals to really kind of wipe out, any kind of food that's stuck on the side of the drains, any kind of bad bacteria that's causing that smell, the drain flies that they'll start to grow in there. We use a probiotic for that. So there's no chemicals, completely chemical free. The end result after that probiotic dies out, it eats all the food that's stuck on that wall. It just dies off, and it's just a water kind of goes down the drain at that point. So there's nothing negatively impacting the environment at that point. So that also gets added into their environmental impact report. So a lot of places really enjoy that, having that knowledge and just kind of removing chemicals from their facility. The second one is called Filter Cool. So it's a dehumidifying of walk-in fridges and freezers. And it's a reusable, so it's a sort of a absorbent pad that we put inside the walk-in fridges and freezers. And that once it's completely absorbed, we just put it into a dehumidifier, and it just completely removes all the water from it, and you can just kind of reuse it again. So it's it's really the current system that's used. It's a company called Ecolab, so a lot of people will use. It does use some chemicals inside there, so it's not fully environmentally friendly. It's also not fully reusable as well. So our system, again, it keeps it more on the environmental friendly side. The other big business line that actually I'm going to be starting sometime this fall, it's called Filter Clean, and Rob alluded to it a little bit. It's a steam cleaning of a kitchen. And so it reduces most cleaning companies that do kitchens will use just really heavy caustic and toxic chemicals, full degreasers to just fully clean your kitchen. We reduce that tremendously by using steam instead of. We do have to use some chemicals for some things, but it's a massive reduction in the chemicals that are needed. So again, adding to that environmental side of it, and that part also gets added into their environmental impact report once they join into that business line. And although I don't have that business line yet that I'm doing currently, but I probably have about half of my customers essentially waiting for me to start. Just finding good kitchen cleaners apparently is a really big challenge. I talked to one customer that was, so I'm in, like I said, in the Greater Boston area. They had contracted a company that was coming from Southern Rhode Island up to do them because they couldn't find anyone locally to do it. So this person was driving 2.5, 3 hours and charging really, really high rates because they were driving so far. And so when I mentioned that I'm going to be grabbing it this fall, he immediately was like, "Yes, please. I don't care what you charge. Just please take it over for me." And that's kind of the general theme is, once people know what we do, they just love it and they want to continue doing more.
And it to me, like everything you do would be such a big stamp for any restaurant. Like especially if you're not a franchise, because you don't have as much to kind of project. But I mean, that would say, hey, we got this box checked, we got that box checked, our freezer or kitchen or fryer,
Yeah, a lot
high
of people like
quality
to say that.
food, environmentally, everything.
Yeah, the selling point for a lot of people, and they'll bring this up, it's like, if you can be my main vendor for all of these things, and I can actually stop communicating with 4 other vendors, like that in itself is a massive win. Now I just get one invoice, I talk to one person, and I don't have to worry about scheduling with 10 other people or finding time that's right for them. Like, you just tell me when you're coming, I know what you're doing, and it's taken care of.
That leads to the ongoing vertical growth. And you have those clients that they're not even thinking twice. You're always going to be their vendor, which is beautiful to be in that spot.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna thank you both for your time, but I want to wrap up with a couple more, just one final one for each of you. Okay. So Paul, I'll start with you. Well, no, I'm going to end with you. I want you to just share a day in the life. Like, you were doing something before. You thought about franchising. You got involved with this industry. Tell me how it's changed your life. Like, if you could frame what it's like to be a business owner, to be a franchisee, and to be in this, and how important is it to try to understand what you're getting into? That sort of feeling. Like, what am I actually doing every day? Maybe help the audience understand that.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I've done every day has actually evolved. I've been an owner now for 7 months. When I first started, I had to do everything, right? I didn't have any employees. So I was working 120 hour weeks when I first started. And I was doing all the servicing every day, and I'd come home. I'd have to do all the paperwork associated with the business, any kind of other sort of business operations that I had to do, any kind of scheduling that I had to do, invoicing, accounting. I was doing all of it. And then I, gradually started hiring people, hiring some consultants to help with the accounting, the financing side. I hired some technicians. So I don't go out on the road every day to do the service, but I probably go out maybe once or twice a week still to help out my guys. And especially if any new hire that I'll hire, I'll be the main trainer as well. So I'll go out with that new person to train them. Usually takes about 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the person, to fully pick it up. So I'll go out with them every day and continue doing the rest of my job. But I'm slowly sort of building out the team. And, people like things that I know others can do better than me, especially like accounting, for example. Just kind of farming that stuff out. That okay, like I don't have to do this. Like someone else can do this, and you're really trying to find, where am I most useful? And my background in operations and sales, really is my strength. So that's really where I see where I should spend the most of my time. I also, where I did my training down with a gentleman in New Jersey, and he made a comment to me that I truly believe in. If you're not leading from the front, you start losing the trust and respect from your people. So I do want to, as often as I can, go out with my guys, be with them, be in the trenches with them, show them that, hey, I'll roll up my sleeves, I'll get dirty as well. And that way, they just believe in you more, right? They believe in the business more. So overall, I would say most of my days are spent sort of, Rob mentioned, I'm in the process of acquiring 2 additional territories right now. So for the last month and a half, 2 months has been sort of, raising capital, speaking with these owners, coming to an agreement on, the purchasing price and, going through the whole entire contract essentially with them. So I spend a lot of my time doing that, but really, just kind of running the day to day and, trying to do a little bit of everything.
Yeah. I think and just to distill a lot of wisdom in your answer, ultimately, what is your strengths, right? And how will those strengths be used in this new situation? And what does it take to build? Because a lot of times the thing you want to get to takes time to get to. Yeah. It's not that the promise isn't there, but you got to build it first.
Yeah. So you have to be very comfortable. You have to be very comfortable delegating. I think a lot of people who have never participated in sort of a higher level of business before have a hard time with that, right? They feel like they have to do everything. But if you're doing everything, you just can't do everything well, right? So you have to find, where are my weaknesses? What can I offload to people that are like I said, like accounting was my first one. I was like, I need to find an accountant. Like I just can't.
A lot of people, yeah.
I can do it, but I am way too slow at it. I'm not as knowledgeable at it. Like there are people that can do this in their sleep. So it's like things like that. Like how do you find little segments of time where you can get time back, right? Instead of me having to work 100 and 120 hour weeks, like how can I get some of that time back by offloading some of that work to people that are way better at it than me? And that's, I think that's a really big trick coming into a new franchise of like learning the whole business, understanding the whole business, and then seeing, okay, what parts of it can I offload?
Got it. Yeah, it is a personal decision in some level. There's a
Yeah.
framework, there's a system, but there's some flexibility to. So Rob, I want to. All right, so there's a guy that's recruited a heck of a lot of people and talked to gosh knows how many that have been thinking about businesses and starting things. What tip, what advice could you leave with the audience about that journey? Right, like what are they? Obviously you're looking for a certain candidate, but what is it for them that you would give them advice about in terms of them approaching guys like you and looking for an opportunity?
So our discovery process, and it's I liken it to a courtship, right? I'm not a salesperson. Your listeners, you've probably already gathered this. Rob is not a salesperson. I'm not a short cycled, sexy transactional guy. I'm a relational person, and it takes time for you to, get to know me, build rapport and trust. But at the end of the day, that discovery process, it does take time, but it always starts at understanding what a person's why is. So understanding in Paulo's case, again, it was 7 short months ago, and our initial conversations were understanding, well, Paulo, you have a good job, you make a good living. Why are you looking to invest in something else? More importantly, what type of return are you looking for? And through those conversations, Rob, I think understanding someone's why, then making sure that there's a fit. So we want to make sure that a franchise owner has a fit in a market that we have available. Because at the end of the day, there are certain solopreneurs, right? Single unit operators, man on a van, chuck on a truck. If you have a goal of making $120,000 a year and you want to replace a job, we probably have a smaller market for that goal. But if you're an executive model looking to build wealth, scale to build and sell in 5 years, that's fine. I just need to know on the front end so that we can find the right fit. So I guess to answer your question, Rob, it's number one, understanding what their goals and objectives are early on, and then understanding that it takes time for the prospect to do their due diligence on the brand, because we conversely do our due diligence on the prospect to make sure that there's a good fit. So just understand that it takes time. It's not a 2-week notice, hey, I'm going to go find a new job. It's 30, 60, 90-day journey before we even get to a point of decision, and then ultimately get you in a position to start. So I'll leave you with that. It's not a rush process. It takes time, and it's unique, right?
Yeah. I liked your description of what you weren't, what kind of sales guy you were and what kind you weren't. So, yeah, that's right. And I think I've been a little bit of a mix as I grew up, but I am definitely a relational guy now for sure.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's your business model is awesome. I gotta say, I say that a lot because I love franchising and I like the brands. But yeah, obviously you have to decide if you want to deal with kitchens and deal with restaurants and stuff. I think there's some thought to all those types of things. But what an incredible way to help people build an income, build a business, great service. It ticks all the modern boxes of what makes you feel pretty good about what you do for a living. So I got to say that for me. What's the best way they could get a hold of? Hey, Rob, I guess this is for you. If folks want to maybe start a conversation, what's the best way to do that with you guys? How do they get?
I mean, our website's always the best. filtafranchise.com. Just inquire. You can reach me there. I would also recommend that you may have 1 or 2 potential customers in the Boston market. They can do the same. They can go to filta.com and inquire for either services through filta.com or through filta.com or Filta Franchise. They can find us here at the home office.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I tell you, I always say it every time. Take them up on that. Reach out to these guys. These teams are brilliant. They're smart. They get their craft. I think that, an hour with someone like Rob, honestly, take notes, learn about business, and you'll come away positive for it. I think everybody's journey when they look for a franchise is absolutely a valuable one, regardless, because you learn a ton. I know I did. I thought I knew a lot back before franchising. So anyway, thank you guys for being on the show today. I can't thank you enough for taking this extra time to talk to us and sharing this with our listeners. But again, it's clear that Filta is a pioneer in this idea of making places healthier, right? That's the way I feel about it. And tastier. I'm a foodie, so I can't imagine just the description of how we talked about this makes the food seem like it would taste better. So thanks again, guys. I appreciate you having me on the show. Hope to have you back again soon.
Thanks,
Bye for
Rob.
now.
You have
Take
a good
care.
day. Thanks, Paulo.
Yep.